Hey.
Oh, hi.
Hello.
Fancy seeing you there.
Oh,
What are you doing here in just your nipples?
Oh, I'm just hanging by my ankles in Kevin MacLeod's pleasure chamber.
And I'm hanging by my ankles in an entirely different form and fashion, unfortunately.
What do you think Kevin MacLeod's favorite sex position is?
He's a glass table guy to me.
What's glass table?
He's the glass bottom boat person.
I don't understand what you're saying.
So that is where you lay beneath a glass table and have someone either urinate or defecate on the table, and you watch them whilst you pleasure yourself.
Oh my god, I'm a glass table guy.
It's otherwise referred to as the glass bottom boat ride. Just depending upon your preference. So that's definitely an Uncle Touchy thing.
I think that we are officially even for the picture that I sent you 2 nights ago.
Nope. There's no, because I mean, granted, we'll go by your mental processes can produce something far more vivid, but that is one of the most disturbing images I have ever encountered in my life, and I've seen German fetish porn.
Oh,
so,
okay. You're gonna have to show me this now, and then also,
right.
like,
I'll
not
s-
safe for work.
I want you to notice.
I'll send it to the chat.
Okay. Because like
you asked
can't
for
just,
this, Michael.
You can't just talk about. You can't. Now I'm getting all excited
Let's
again.
see.
You can't just.
John,
tease me
go
with a
ahead
good
and
time.
John, could you give a little background as to how you discovered this?
So I talk about them ad nauseum.
Oh my
but
god.
I'm a huge fan of Your Mom's House podcast with Tom Segura and Christina Pazynski, and I describe it like if it's a fast pitch to people as kind of like Tosh.0 if it was actually good and funny, because it's internet
Shots
based
fired.
So it's you can just listen to it on its own, but that's just like getting like just a quarter of the whole picture because they actually have it filmed, in a studio. So I watch it every week on YouTube, but they show clips and they find everything from cute things, but the majority of what they find is this kind of lane of like just
Disturbing.
touched people, if you will. And they showed this clip last week of this. Oh God, how old did you say he looked, Shane?
172.
I mean, that's not wrong. But he's bald and he has a tattoo on his forehead that says pig, and the G goes down and circles the literal pig snout. And he's wearing, in this picture, he's wearing a hoodie but no shirt underneath, but he's wearing a bra. And in the middle of the bra is tattooed Miss Talon's cuckold property. And then on his belly, his big belly, is tattooed slut. And in the clip that they show on Your Mom's House, he's a fetishist, obviously. And he has fashioned these cups, like suction cups that he puts on both of his titties, so that he can make them titties. And
Oh, okay. That's how. Okay, I was a little confused as to how the physics behind that was going on.
yeah, so that's why in the
Biology,
picture, that's why he actually necessitates a bra now. But anyway, so I was trying to describe this to Shane over PlayStation, like him. Our drummer Asher and I were playing Bloodborne, and I just kept saying titty, because that's what the guy takes the cups off in the video and starts like flapping them around. It's disturbing and hilarious, but I did not expect that, because I sent that picture out of the blue because this guy has his own subreddit.
Naturally.
that I found, or I didn't find it, but I found it from a peripheral podcast episode. But I saw that picture and I saved it because it killed me, and then I sent it to Shane and Asher in a group chat, and I don't know why I just didn't expect Shane to be so disturbed by it, but you could have believed that I showed him a picture of his mom being like filleted by how like grossed out he got.
His face does speaks to the contrary there.
Can we take a moment and address that fellatio can't be performed on a woman?
Oh, that's what he was getting disturbed by.
let's just stop. So it's cunnilingus if you are going to be
Not hungry,
performing
thanks.
oral sex on a woman. You do it and you'll clean it up.
Sorry, your mom filleting.
I mean, even that, it's just, get in the right lane.
Okay, so let's do Would You Rather. Would you rather watch your mom give a blowjob, or would you rather watch this guy give a blowjob?
I mean, you're presupposing that I haven't seen either of those things already.
He just saw the picture and he's like, Dad?
Well, you know, you're not wrong. The strange thing is, again, I don't need to be encouraged to want to salt the earth. If this podcast is evidence of anything, it's that I believe we could really do with a significant reduction in the human race. Wow. And Reddit is almost like the biggest affirmation for that, and I don't need it anymore. Like, a lot of the things that I have sought that wound up disturbing me, be that films or, you know, any published materials on serial killers, etc., etc., I was studying because of psychological underpinnings or other things like this, and that person is a fascinating character study if we want to go into that. However, I don't need to watch him flop his man meat about and say, who would have ever thought you'd see tits on a pig? Titty, titty, titty. And
he's a hungry little
tit
pig.
cup, I could have done without. Just for the rest of my life, I'd have been fine never hearing tit cup ever again.
If it makes you feel any better, on his subreddit, he is encouraging people in the Ontario area. He puts his phone number on there, and he says you can call him if you want to get your dick sucked by a pig. But he's only going to answer from the area code that he's in. No other will get answered. But he's also saying that he never expected this COVID thing to get in the way of his fetish so much. So maybe next time, like when this is done, he'll be more of like a comes day prepper. And he'll just like store semen away because he craves it. So
is he related to a young lady in Phoenix that we're all, you know, familiar with now? Or
they're definitely kindred. Yeah.
Well, they're kissing cousins at this point. So there's a degree of depravity that, again, I'm not that complicated. I get off in a pretty rudimentary fashion. It's just lather, rinse, repeat. So I have never felt the need to stack on, you know, like the dirtiest that I will probably admit to getting is like if someone comes out in a pair of thigh-high stockings, I'm good. I'm sold. That's you don't have to do much else.
You're not a serial killer. Your needs aren't evolving. Like it's
right. So I don't need someone flying in on the trapeze with sort of whirling dervishes hanging off their nipples and something on fire where it shouldn't be in order to get my interest. It's kind of, you know, like a stiff breeze might get me to that point. So these people that have to go to these lengths to sate themselves in whatever, you know, fetishistic fashion. And it's 2020. I'm not kink shaming anybody. Go and do whatever, as long as it's not hurting other people. And
yeah,
you're
not telling him not to crave cum. You're just saying that it makes you uncomfortable to see him eating it.
I just, you know, there are points where I don't want my Venn diagram to overlap his. That's what I'm saying.
Keep the bubbles separate.
Yeah. I mean, I'm fine with him being out there, and, you know, in all honesty, I just don't need it. That image can't be removed from my brain. And the next time I try to get aroused, that's going to pop up at some point.
Meanwhile, it is related because it's in Tom Segura's most recent special, and he's talking about how he likes to make people upset, and he feels like every time he does, like, you know, i.e. showing somebody a clip like this or whatever, that he feels like he has this like marching band inside of him, like in his conscious, like just banging around going, good job, good job, good job. And the moment that we disconnected from the party chat, and I was like I was like, oh my god, that was so much fun. I was saying that out loud, and then it hit me like a just 10 tons of bricks that how offended you got by that, and I immediately smiled harder than I was. I think in the course of our friendship, we have grossed each other out like as an Olympic sport. Mm-hmm. So the fact that there are still gray, murky areas that we can hit makes me very happy.
Yeah, it's, again, I need no further incentivization to want to harm myself or others than just existence in general, particularly these days.
Yeah.
So, I found my first, like, pothole in the lane of describing how this has been like blissful for me to be fully removed from people, other than John sharing, obscene human beings with me. It's this idea that we're existing in right now where things are sort of like, I'm in a library right now, which is unoccupied by other people. I'm walking on a campus, which is essentially unoccupied. So I'm in my own version of like I Am Legend at the moment.
It does feel that, huh?
Where everything is somewhat occupied, but not. And I think the thing that is my only hang up about this whole situation is the metaphor that I've commonly used in awkward instances is that, daddy just hit mommy at the dinner table and we all have to finish eating.
Yeah.
The expansion on that metaphor for the current state is that mommy, as a reprisal, stabbed dad at the table and we were sent to our rooms. Now, normally that's fine because I love my room. There's solace in my room. It is a safe haven for most everything if I'm in this current situation as a child. However, the circumstances are disturbing and alarming. And furthermore, then, there are so many other things that are wafting in the background that I can't really go on about my general routine and comfort based on the fact I'm like, Dad's bleeding out in the kitchen right now, and I want to know what's happening, but I don't dare go out. So if I need to piss, I'll probably leave my room, because, that's a desperate need. But other than that, I'm going to stay in my room and just hope that this blows over. And I think we have now an entire race of humanity doing this exact thing, where we're all hiding in our rooms going like, God, I hope this blows over. And, the occasional misaligned individuals are not doing this, and they're going out and running around.
And...
Yeah, Twitter has brought me no solace.
Like, there was one gentleman, we have this creepy gaggle of course, public patrons that come in, and it's, your individuals who are not welcome in other polite areas of society. So the one safe haven that they have is a library. And this odd, like, alfalfa looking motherfucker has... Like, I have to keep an eye on him because he looks like the sort of person who is just going to run around and diddle himself behind people, without their knowing. Like, he just has that off look about him. Mm-hmm. And you work security for long enough that you start to kind of have eagle eyes for these sorts of things. And I would be leery of myself right now, being like I look like a light bulb or a cancer patient without the beard.
Oh, yeah, Shane lost the bet and he shaved off his whole beard.
Shaved off the whole beard just for the the sake of going. If we didn't get those lies, someone had to be punished. So
I'm going to call bullshit on that because you said that earlier that wasn't the reason. So
you know what I realized? I haven't shaved my face completely down since probably 2007. That is the last time I've actually had a clean-shaven face, and I had forgotten, because we're not going out in public, so I haven't been using my beard oil as much, and I haven't been using my balm, because I don't want to waste it if I don't have to, and I started getting crusty, and my mustache started bothering me, and I was like, well, I can probably just take that down. I was like, Melissa's never seen me with a cleanly shaven face, and we've, kind of talked about how she's interested to see it, and... like every bad decision, immediately after it happened, you're like, okay, put it back. I miss the beard. I enjoy seeing that you have dimples, but just, you're I like Uncle Fester right now.
Put it back.
You and I are having similar, tics almost, where I've been having the internal debate of like, okay, maybe I just keep the beard and I take a 2 to my head because I'm just so I'm so bored. It's like, fuck it. Like, I'm going to be inside the house so long that by the time that, I see anybody again, it'll grow back and I can get a proper haircut and style and whatever. Because right now I made the joke, like, I'm not shaving or cutting my hair until this is all over. But I'm starting to get to the point where it's like, I don't even give a fuck anymore. Like, I just hate having to do other things like so much. Like, can I just kill the routine by killing the appearance?
Mm-hmm. That was my exact rationale. Is like, we're not going to be doing any shows. I'm technically working from home, so no one sees me but her and you, unfortunate gentleman. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, I can go out without feeling too self-conscious because I hate I got chins like a Chinese phone book here. So I hate having, dude, there is some serious turkey neck happening here. I'm not a fan, but, so it's always one of those bizarre things. Anywho, I digress pretty rapidly.
Oh, hey, can we do a Martin Scorsese real quick? And can you give him the title card after we're already a quarter into the episode?
Oh,
Maybe, possibly.
I guess I can put on the intro music right here.
That would be fucking hilarious.
I mean,
let's do that.
Yeah.
We're 20 minutes into a recording. Yes. By the eternal, behold.
behold.
It's the Disinformed podcast. I am still Shane.
I am kind of John.
And I am only partially Michael.
I was going to say you're marginally Michael.
Oh,
Oh, that's a good one.
damn.
Well done. I think it's because without having the music as a ballast, like we just kind of weigh in, and it's interesting to see kind of where that takes us.
And to be fair, I kind of emotionally charged you
How?
by bringing up Robert Summerton.
It's difficult.
Or is it
So
Norman?
Norman.
I don't want to know his name.
Norman
If you give it a name, it's real, and I'd like to believe that man doesn't exist.
You have told me that multiple times throughout my life.
Which is funny. I actually have. Michael, you will appreciate this joke. At one point, when we were in our worst and most debauched stages, you'd have your general sort of sharing protocols where I'd see by the way, got this in the old text bucket last night. I hope that you enjoy. I'm like, oh, that's very nice. Okay. And in the midst of that, I was told at one point there's an individual who eventually, managed to kindle a relationship with John, who I had seen in various stages, was then brought around and not just a casual throwaway single-use friend, and wound up being someone he was with for a bit. And I was like, John, you can't do that. You can't make them human like this. It's either one or the other. It's either an object or it's a person, and we can't distinguish those two from one another.
And we were on the debauch kind of side of things. We use code names. It was hilarious, but it was just because it was easier than trying to be like, hey, you remember so-and-so? You just use the identifier. So it would be like, hey, remember Catsuit?
It's the serial killer thing. You're dehumanizing them. I don't want to personalize it by giving it a name and feeling like I have to have an emotional attachment to it.
Yeah, it's like farm animals. You raise some pigs, you give one a name, and you suddenly don't want to kill it for its meat.
Listen, I know that your relationship is weird, but you can't relate women to pigs.
Well, I mean, here's the thing, though. It's just if it's a cum rag with keen fashion sense, I don't want to have it be something I have to sit down to dinner to at some point. I don't want to have to look over the table at somebody and be like, oh my god, I've seen your asshole. I have that enough with my mom. I don't need that in any other circumstance.
I don't know whether to do a trigger warning, a problematic Shane Lane warning, or what, so I'm just going to go ahead and say, sorry, God. And
not safe for life.
I can't even hide behind the whole, this does not represent our views, because, we've all...
You just admitted to it 5 seconds ago.
Man, Shane really checkmated me into this problematic corner of fuck hatred.
Listen, we are all like a coin. There are two sides to our personalities, and some are respectful and loving and appreciable individuals, and others are the most debauched, depraved, bacchanalian versions of ourselves, and you have to reconcile those two things. It's the id versus the ego, superego kind of thing.
I've said the Dallas Green quote on air, haven't I?
Yeah.
I don't recall.
It's the he wrote it. I think it was a liner note around Little Hell, but essentially he said that if you are not looking back on the past and wincing a little bit, then you haven't grown as a person. Yeah. So in that regard, every time that we tell these stories from the past, at least especially the catsuit story and other little details that seep through, I'm like, oh God, that's so bad. I'm such an asshole. And then I was like, oh, I was such an asshole. I'm a different kind of asshole now, but at least now the assholery is kind of fine tuned.
Yeah.
We all have to go through a refining process. I mean, if you just take us in the raw, it's going to be terrifying.
And hurt.
So,
painful.
Indeed. So back to the random pothole that I hit. But so I see this gentleman, this Opie-looking, freak just ambling about, and he's always on campus still. He's still just flitting about.
On the escalator again.
on the escalator, and he's rifling through the refuse, and he's sort of like just poking around, and I'm like, why are you here? And it's like a buzzard on a body, just waiting for this library to open back up. Like it's I've got no place else to go. And there's a measure of like this distrust that I have kindling every time I see him. And it's another human being who's trying to get along, and he could be out exercising. He could be doing any number of things. But the second I see him, my hackles get up and I'm like, oh, and I think it's just kind of a byproduct of the situation we find ourselves in, because these are, not your standard operating circumstances. But so yeah, that's the metaphor for the current is I'm in my room waiting to hear whether or not Dad's going to bleed out.
No, that's fair.
There was an article that I skimmed earlier when I was looking up something else.
He can't read without pictures, see?
Yeah, exactly. Like there was only like 1 or 2 pictures, so I kind of scrapped it. But it was essentially saying that the author of the piece was watching Die Hard, and he was actually cringing because he would see John McClane touch his face, and he would see other people in that movie touch their face, not just touch John McClane's face, but touch their faces. And so he would cringe because that's kind of the culture that is going on right now, where it's like
you're seeing him like crawl through vents and shit, and then he like gets out of the vent, and the first thing he does is like suck his thumb, like
yeah, or like wipe his face or something like that, and you're just like, why are you doing that? And it's so funny to read those things because, like, honestly, and for me, life hasn't really changed much, except for instead of having to go to the university and sit through a couple of labs like once a week or something like that, I just have to sit here in my computer and watch other people attempt to do it. I still go to my other job at Howie's. The tables aren't set up outside, and I don't have to deal with the homeless people that sleep out there every once in a while. But other than that, it's been pretty much the same life for me. So, like, seeing that, I mean, I can't get drunk, outside at a bar, but I could just say that.
Do it at home like a normal alcoholic, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just telling myself that I'm trying to improve my lot of life and, cut on my drinking. But
yeah, the weird thing is it's almost like I hate to say these words because they have such a charged connotation, but it's a privileged check of a moment where all three of us are kind of excuse me are in a situation where life is different, but in a way where you just pivot and you roll with it, but the uncomfortableness is very first world. And it's not problems of am I going to eat, am I going to keep my house or my apartment. It's I can't go sit down at a bar, or I can't go read at the library, or I can't go sit inside a Starbucks and harass the baristas.
Yeah.
And then get kicked out because of the massive mud pie that you left in their bathroom. And then they made you clean it up before that they would serve you, and I didn't know that they were allowed to even do that.
How did they know you made the massive mud pie unless you were like painting the walls with it?
That's what I'm saying.
He came out after touching his face, and they're like, "Whoa, man, you shouldn't be touching your face after that." What was it?
I was actually eating my own shit.
Oh, okay.
What else is new?
Mm-hmm. I was what was it? It also has to do with the state that we're in. Our quarantine, what counts as an essential business, is very lax compared to other places. Like I was talking to someone from Kentucky,
we're basically
and, like,
Florida.
Oh, well, at least our beaches aren't open. Though I'd say that if we had beaches, they wouldn't be open. I think we're
I've seen plenty of beaches.
Oof.
Oh, I see what you did there. Yeah.
But I was talking to a friend from Kentucky. Well, okay, girlfriend's friend, whatever. And they were saying that like Target was closed. Like pretty much, if you're going anywhere, you're just doing groceries. Like they don't even have like essential items. Like in places like Michigan, like they only have grocery like food items there. You can't buy like paint or stuff at a Walmart, and it's like that's not here. I mean, I've gone to 12 West, actually, the brewery in downtown Mesa. I've gone there a couple times because they sell their beers to go. We just walked in, we chatted up like the head bartender and bought like 8 bottles of one of their sours, and it was just like almost like a normal day. Like the only thing that was different was the chairs were set up or were put on the tables, and no one was sitting there drinking. So it's definitely like the state that we're in as well. Like,
the other thing that I think I find just personally that the wall I hit, and we've kind of lamented this as a band, was like it's less than even just the privilege, it's the purpose. Because I have that like instinct of a shark has to keep swimming or it'll die sort of thing. So if we're not producing music, if we're not angling to go out and do shows, and so, you know, the Instagram video recording and stuff is fulfilling to a certain extent, but at the same time it's sort of like not feeling like, okay, well, we're getting momentum, we're going to start releasing stuff, we're selling merch, we're doing shows, or, you know, hustling. And without having that, it's sort of like my work has a bare minimum of invested time that I needed to give it, even at the best of times when I'm actually working, because I compartmentalized my life really well with that facet.
Yeah.
They just wanting to get back into, like, yeah, we have 2 songs that are going to be sent over to us, and I'm chomping at the bit to get them, and I'm like, I don't know why. Because it's not really going to make much of a difference, because we're not going to do a physical release anytime soon. And even then, it's like no one's going to hear it if we want to. So it's just odd. You're like screaming in an echo chamber, basically.
Oh my God. What was the... So I am reading Watchmen. I think I said that.
yeah,
yes,
I think
you did.
That, yeah.
But they have a quote. They have quotes at the end of each chapter.
Yeah.
And Michael and Shane, you can help me out with who the quote is from. Is it Nietzsche? Nietzsche. But essentially, it's something that you have said in so many words to me before, Shane, which is sometimes when you're staring into the abyss stares back at you.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
And I read that right where I was getting hit with the same feelings that you're just describing. And I was like, oof, wish I had not read that right now, because it's exactly what it feels like. Where like now, like you're getting these like really self-reflective times. Like all I have is time to focus on the bad and the good, but I mean most of the time it's the abyss feel. But yeah, it is weird, Shane, to not have like I say posturing. Like having the need to be like, I am doing this because X will happen, or because X could happen if I press.
Right.
The stakes have just been kind of eliminated. Dad has been sliced open.
We're in that holding pattern where we're trying to land, and we're running out of fuel in the plane, and we're just kind of like, okay, well, this is gonna start getting dire real quick. But the thing I was talking about, funnily enough, with my folks fairly recently is introspection scares a lot of folks who don't commonly delve into it. And we were talking about individuals using marijuana. Now, obviously, I have no frame of reference for this. If we've talked about this, I'm cleaner than the Pope's bed sheets. So other than, you know, the tears of Summerton, we're cutting that out. I know.
You know, in which case you are a lot like the Pope.
Indeed, yes.
You abstain from drugs and alcohol, but you like to fill holes.
Exactly. And the difficulty of, like, most people where we talked about, whereas alcohol kind of limbers you up in a different way, where you kind of get loose, and we'll call it social lubricant. For a lot of individuals, the only time they will break down some of those inner barriers that they have and see who they are without a filter is if you get stoned. And due to marijuana purportedly like slowing things down and giving you moments to kind of be a little bit more contemplative or introspective, however you want to play it, that's terrifying to a lot of people who don't sit and contemplate those things already. So that was kind of these are those times for individuals who aren't, you know, if you want to have a crisis of conscience or faith, or like, oh my God, what was I doing with my life? Mine was actually a delight, oddly enough, and I'll get into that. I'll dovetail into our follow-up topic here, but please, go ahead, Jim.
Oh, I was going to bring up that yesterday was 420.
Blaze it.
So yesterday I had let's call it a play date with our dearly beloved Asher to play Monster Hunter World and dive back into that with him. So I didn't tell him, but after I did my workout, I ate an edible, and it kicked in basically the first frame that we started playing, and I have never felt so handicapped before because that it is a mechanically rich and dense game, and I knew that going in, but I forgot how much so. So half the time, like, he's talking to me, people are talking to me in the game, I'm trying to remember how to do something, and after I think like, so the course of an edible, so you take it. And then for me, it varies, but it's like 45 to 90 minutes. For me, it usually is like an hour, and I'm full in like the intense part of the high, and then that lasts for about an hour. And then after that hour, I can kind of like start being a human again. So I feel bad for Asher because for that first hour that we were playing, I probably said like 5 words to him. And then afterwards, I was like, oh man, I am so glad that I am past that part of my high. And he's like, oh, holy shit, that makes sense.
Like, you probably should have told him. He would have taken part, and then the two of you could have like hit the same pothole together. Well, he was nice. He
was telling me, because I was like, man, like, I wish I kind of like took less or did something, like we were doing something else, because, you know, I was about the game, like I'm trying to focus on the game. He goes, oh, I love getting just stoned out of my mind and playing this game because I like the textures and the environments. I was like, I'm not paying attention to the environments of the textures. I'm paying attention on trying to just play it. Like,
right. I think the Bloodborne thing probably gives you a bit of that. Once you start compressing with Bloodborne, like, it is unforgiving. You cannot miss anything, or it will just devour you whole. Yeah. So yeah, having like finally platinumed that bloody thing last night, I was very excited to kind of run through. And yeah, it is one of those things where you realize the degree to which you get paranoid about that game, because you can't even pause. I mean, you can get in your worst set of circumstances, and you're like, oh, I can't stop. I have to keep running. So
love it. But anyway, you said you had some topics?
Well, I was thinking, so this is, if the modern adage of I'm living my best life, it's quite literally, I am living my best life right now, not limited to just being sequestered away and having full unfettered access to all of my entertainment and my pop culture paradise that is my house. I was thinking of, do you feel like you have a calling, like outside of, and I'll take music off of the board, because obviously that's going to say if I have a job I want to do for the rest of my life, my first inclination is if I can make music and make enough money off of it, sure. But like, was there a job that once you got into the job, or was there a job you pined for, where a child will say blithely, I want to be a fireman growing up, that you found like, oh my God, I'm in my niche, like this is my place? And to give you an example, and then we can dovetail off for your answers, but when I started working at Tower Records, like that was, for that time and place, probably one of the best times of my life, because I got to go to work at a place where I was surrounded by things I loved, because it's basically akin to what Zia carries now. It's literature, there's books all over the place, there's little odd tchotchkes, and it's all pop culture references and all related that way. And then it's music. And I just sat and talked about music with people and the things I'm passionate about and why I was passionate about it for hours on end. And I got paid to do it. So it's kind of the Kevin Smith run about working as a clerk. He's like, I got to watch television and get paid for it, basically. I just sit around and occasionally I'd have to interact with people. So I was like, technically, if that's what my aspiration is, like if I could just quit everything else, and if I had no other means, if money was off the table and all I had to worry about was just go do something fun, it would be a lot of fun to just go work in a record store again.
Were you guys following that emotional roller coaster that I was on as well?
Yeah,
I just saw you. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank God that we have everything backed up and recorded, and Audacity didn't lose anything, so we should be fine. But that was you talking about Tower Records and the yes. immense fun and fulfillment that you had with that job.
Right, because it was just everything that I loved in a small, bite-sized, easy-to-use package, basically. I could just go to work and talk to my friends about the bands I liked and get paid for it, and occasionally be interrupted by someone going, hey, could you tell me how I could find this Britney Spears album? And yeah, it's not the worst thing in the world to deal with comparatively, having done a lot of other things. So that's my my fun. What would we be doing otherwise? Money's not an issue, and of course, naturally, music is our passion for John and I. And Michael, if you could be in a touring marching band somewhere, I'm sure given the opportunity you'd just relish that. But
no, I'm actually really bad at playing music. I don't practice, so
that's why you went to
oh yeah, no, I didn't have to do shit. I just
Michael,
had to show up and march.
We usually go down the line of Shane, me, you, but how about you take this?
So this is actually like something I've thought about a lot, because I haven't really been worked at a place or been part of a job where I've thought like I've had that level of contentment. Because like I don't really care about making pizza. It's not something that I would enjoy doing, even if I didn't have to deal with the customers. Like, I mean, it's cool when you make some, like, you translate art into your pizzas, like into your work, where you can make really good, really tasty, really nice, pretty looking pizzas. But I mean, like, that's not something that I really want to do with my life.
And you're working at a chain. You're not, at your own store where you pick the ingredients and you've made the pizza because it's a passion play for you. You're basically just throwing stuff together because people ordered it.
Yeah, I'm even if I had the freedom to make whatever I want and not have to worry about customers or money or store or regulations or any of that, like, I still don't feel like any sort of contentment with that job. It's mainly a matter of it just makes sense for me to stay there because then I get the free parking. I don't have to park on campus.
It's paying the bills.
Food. Yeah, exactly. And the bonuses are also really nice. I mean, the only thing that I've really felt content with, the thing that I love doing, is explaining things to people. Mainly like talking about just explaining concepts of physics. Like when someone comes up to me and is like, I don't understand this, can you help me out? But I haven't even experienced that so much with being a teaching assistant, because, I mean, aside from this one semester, I was teaching entry-level physics courses for people that don't give a shit about physics.
Yeah, so, and that's just a flaw in the educational system, though. So I think technically you do have the soul of an educator. You're just not in the configuration that this country has created.
True. When you put it that way, that makes a lot of sense. So if I had the opportunity to teach in a way that, like, I can explain whatever I want and help them understand, because I do love, like, when someone comes up to me with a question and I explain it to them and they're like, oh, like that look of realization and understanding, and they
the
do
aha
that
moment.
And they even make that noise. Like, I can't help but smile like a doofus when they do that. And I even tell them, like, that's, like, honestly, one of the best things that I like to see is when they have their own, like, they can cut me off and say, oh, so like this. And that shows that they understand it. I don't even have to finish it. I will let them speak. Like, because that's one thing that I've always dealt with myself because of my ADHD. I don't understand things immediately. I need to have someone explain it to me 5 times, and then I need to think it through 5 separate times, and then I might understand it. So I have to think it through so many things.
That's why you and our violinists get along so well.
We get along?
Well, I mean, in my head canon, you do.
Oh, okay.
As much as anyone can get along with her.
I mean, like, we've talked, like, a couple of times. I heard her rant about her parents is, like, making cider or something up north, and
mead.
It's pronounced toilet wine, and it's elegant and classy.
Yeah, but other than that.
But so to put a quick summation on your point, it's like the Stranger Things quote of you like helping people open a curiosity door.
Yes.
And sharing things with them and explaining how the trapeze artist manages to make it on the other, the high wire artist makes it to the other side, the upside down.
Whatever you said, we're gonna go with that.
I think I know the reference you're talking about. It was like from the first season.
Yeah.
With the physics teacher, like.
It's the flea and the trapeze artist, I think, or something like that. Or the high wire.
The flea can hang upside down. And,
right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's nice when you have someone who has a genuine interest in something that you also have a genuine interest in, which is basically the Tower Records thing. As if I had a really fun story about, like, a customer who came in and walked into a barrage of information from me by saying, hey, what Dave Matthews record should I buy? And yes, feel free to lampoon me for hours on that, listeners. That's just, we all have personal tastes. But
I really like Ants Marching. It's one of my favorite songs because I played it in Pep Band, so
I was
I won't judge you.
goon. I still really love Dave Matthews. I've kind of fallen off the wagon because after a while it's the AC/DC principle. It gets to be old hat for a bit. But I mean, I'm in a band with a violinist for a reason. It's one of the things I enjoyed between like Dave Matthews or Hurt, like sonically. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I spent probably 45 minutes with that person and upsold a significant amount of material because, like, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to have a moment where you get home from work and you dance around in the house because there's a Dave Matthews album for that? Do you want to smoke a really big blunt and hang out and just sort of like contemplate the movement of the universe? Because there's a Dave Matthews album for that.
You know, I am glad and sad in equal measure that I didn't know you during that time, because I can see you in that role at Tower Station so well, just based on how you give recommendations musically to people, like random passerby, still to this day, to the tune that you made me a whole Genesis playlist curated
for no reason.
The Shane does a very, not to detract from Michael for a second, just because you brought it up, it's in my head. Shane does a really amazing playlist job where he understands pacing and ebb and flow. So if you ever want to get into an artist that Shane knows rather well, I would highly recommend harassing him to make you a custom playlist, because they are quite phenomenal. He's the reason that I like the Decemberists now.
God bless you.
Because we were coming back, we were on an 1.5-hour drive back to the valley, and he threw on his Decemberist playlist, and just the order of all the songs, like I didn't know a single, like I knew the hit, or not the hit, but I knew a couple songs, but I just heard them in passing. But just the flow of that was, I was like, I need to check these guys out more on my own. But Michael, yeah, we've talked about that, I think, off air before, like maybe at the bar or over a drink or something. And I think you do a good job of educating, and I feel like you're definitely on that path.
Well, that's just because there are a couple of patrons that would ask me questions because they saw that I would be grading physics papers, and especially that one quote mathematician coming up and asking me stupid questions like, how much energy does it take to cook a chicken? Or can you cook how hard do you have to slap a chicken to cook it?
You're like, stand still.
Yeah, it's like, do I go up to you and say, hey, can you prove this hard mathematical like theorem just off the top of your head? No.
Oh my gosh.
But if you ask me, like, why does it hurt when I get slapped or when I slap someone else? Like,
or when you
be
pee.
like, okay. Well, I'm not a doctor there. I can't help you with that.
Can you imagine how strange that would be if someone randomly that you don't know, it's like you meet them at the bar, you're having drinks, like, hey, just maybe you can help me solve this little debate. Why does it hurt when I pee?
It's like, well, is there blood in it?
Exclusively.
Well, let's ask good old Google here.
It says that you should be dead.
WebMD, your best friend. That's how you discover
probably cancer.
The 17 different ways you have cancer.
It's how you discover beautiful things like the Bristol stool scale.
Or a pig with tits.
Have we talked about the Bristol stool scale before?
No.
Is this another glass ship?
No, close. When I was working at the main library in the campus, that we basically already conceded, a lot of us.
But we won't make it easy for them to look it up. So
yeah,
continue.
I mean, bleep however. But I was working in the main library. I opened on Sundays, and when I came in one Sunday morning, I went and checked the restroom, and there was all over the floor just a string of what looked like dog feces, just scattered. Like someone had just dragged their ass across the floor, and it was black. And I had not ever seen I have not ever seen shit that was that color. And so then I was like, well, what would cause this? So I went up to the front desk, and of course, being someone who works at a library, I began to research what would cause black stool. And
liver failure.
Liver failure is exactly. So as I was looking through, but then I discovered the Bristol stool scale, which the Bristol stool scale is a way of classification of human feces into what is healthy or unhealthy levels. And it is, if you want to look it up, please feel free. But it talks about texture, whether or not you have something that's like pellets or whether they have like something that is candy bar shaped, as it is described as your healthy snake-like feces.
So it's different dimensions depending on the different types of qualities of it.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Is it named after the town of Bristol?
Because
I have
Bristol
no
is
idea.
just a steaming pile of shit.
I
Well,
guess
if it's
we,
steaming, that's kind of scary. Either that or it's really cold outside.
gentlemen, I think we have discovered another topic for me to present to you. Going forward, I will do an episode on the Bristol stool scale. So I think
Yeah, give me the
I
history
can
of that
only
shit.
get so erect.
that's
It
a lie.
hurts.
Well, John, since we've now beat around the bush long enough, like you at a frat party, what is your calling?
You talking about Tower Records reminded me just of having the most fun at other jobs where life was a little, like
More
if you,
carefree?
carefree. Like if you would take the money out of it, like you were saying. Like I actually really enjoyed working at a movie theater. It was one of those like bucket list jobs of like. I got it at the perfect time for me. I wasn't making enough money for it really to be feasible, but I had the most fun there. Outside of working at a movie theater, I always wanted to work at a record store. That just hasn't been in the cards. But I mean, fuck, I might be out of a job, so maybe start reapplying.
It's not really the environment, that lends to the way music has gone these days. Like, there's not a lot of independent record stores that are really thriving. Zia is a really rare exception, which is a beautiful thing I'm excited about.
Yeah. But, gun to my head, current time, there's two things. When I was growing up, when I was in school, I really, really thought that I would end up going for like a history, like to go like to be like a history teacher, like high school.
Really?
High school
I didn't
level.
know
I
that.
really I always admired every teacher that I had in that subject throughout my entire schooling, and it motivated me to consider that. Just hasn't happened. It's very like super suppressed back now.
Okay, because I didn't even know you had an interest in history. Because like I love history, so I'm surprised we haven't jammed about that before.
Yeah. So, but the thing is that I just really haven't, in the back half of my 20s, like I really haven't spent that much time on that subject because I've pursued other things that have interested me. So I probably would be a very boring person to talk to about history with right now.
I'm boring to talk to, period, so you can't top that.
Shots fired.
If we were going present day and not me when I was in high school or just about to turn 18, obviously right now, if money wasn't an issue, I would want to just produce beer. I wouldn't want to work in a tap room. I wouldn't want to deal with customers in any way, shape, or form. I would
Fuck that.
just like to go in, do the Jesse Walter thing and just brew and come home and do whatever the fuck else, like do music and
Hey, you're people who know people, so I mean, you can twist David's arm as well and be like, hey.
It is funnily enough on my mind. It has been on my mind. It's something like, speaking of posturing, there's been a lot of decisions that I've been a lot of decisions that I've made with the intent of eventually at some point going to a brewery and working from the bottom, just to get my foot in the door. This is a big hiccup. But
naturally, yeah.
Not as badly as you'd think. I mean, there's still places that are brewing, like, that are still making it. They might be not making as much, but they're still open for business and doing carryouts and stuff.
So this is kind of a call out. If anyone listening to this in the Phoenix area needs me to come clean their gear and wants to give me hands-on experience, I wide open.
Suck dick.
I was gonna say, I thought Michael was giving you hands-on experience already. So,
oh man.
Well, as long as it's 6 feet away.
Well, he's already said last week he could hit you from 6 feet. So
True. Yeah, that's true.
Well,
I've been practicing.
The point of the exercise, like as I was talking about this, is kind of chasing whimsy, and akin to something that you were relating for John. Like I would love to be a producer. that would something that I'd love is like just to sit and engineer all day and bring people in. If it was artists that you like to work in, but it's a job you've had and have explained the trappings of the worst aspects of that.
Oh yeah.
So, but that would be fun to just sit and make music all day and get paid for it. But the reason that I kind of dove down a rabbit hole here, and I'm going to keep it as a literal translation, is that this dovetailing off of our previous discussion about, you know, how we would hit people up and our opening lines on dating sites, and then discussion about love of both music and now history. My opening salvo for a really long time was I would throw out, if you are familiar at all with the book and now miniseries 11/22/63 by Stephen King.
Am I the only one in here that is not familiar?
I know of it. I haven't read it. I mean,
Well,
I do want to see
I know
this,
what the topic
series.
is, but
Yeah.
So this is exactly kind of the expected foray I would usually have, so I would explain. In it, the main character, Jake Epping, discovers through an associate of his, Al, who owns a diner, that in this diner there's a rabbit hole which breaks through, you know, time and space and leads back to that exact same spot in, I think it was probably like mid-May of 1959. And so you can transport back to that time, but the idea is that if you go through this rabbit hole, you can find your way back to the present day, and only like 15 minutes will have elapsed, but you can go through as much time as you want to in 1959. So you could stay there for 6 months, you could stay there for 6 years, you could stay there, you know, for 60 years and try to catch up and go back to that spot and still emerge right where you left. And so it's an interesting concept. And so they use that, of course, the mechanism of the plot is that the gentleman Al then recommends to him that he go back and stop the Kennedy assassination from happening because he considers it to be a watershed moment in the whole of history. I don't want to get into that. That's a big topic. King's already written the book, so we don't need to. My question is given that conceit, if you have this same wormhole and you have access to it, so you can travel back in time to 1959, what is the band, and this can be probably within a decent amount of time frame, dependent upon how, you know, patient you want to be. What is the band that you are going to go back and see in situ that you're going to find at that time frame? So my opening salvo is always, I'd love to go and see, it was Tom and Jerry at the time, who later turned into their given stage name, which was Simon and Garfunkel.
Oh,
but so they were, you know, floating around in the Greenwich area and spending some time in good old Soho in New York and playing all the coffee shops. I mean, Dylan was floating around, so the folk music scene at that time would be amazing to catch. But also, I would love to run into a Sun Records tour at the time, because that would have had Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, Roy Orbison, and of course Johnny Cash in, you know, their full regalia and playing the tunes that you all love, fresh as they were happening in the moment, because all of this lightning strike like right at the end of the 50s, early 60s. So that would be fantastic. Some might say, you know, I want to go over to England and catch Beatlemania as it rises. I would love to see Pink Floyd, but I'm not sure I have, you know, like 6 or 7 years that I want to wait around to watch that happen. But I mean, then you'd get to see Floyd breaking into Zeppelin, breaking into Sabbath, like a lot of really interesting
so the contingency is
things.
you go back, it's not just go back in to the time where the band is, it's you have to go back to the 50s and wait.
Yes.
Oh,
shit. I mean, now I would say you don't necessarily say you have to wait, but I mean, if you know something from the late, you know, 50s, early 60s that you can say off the top of your head you'd love to see, that's great. But remember, this is a dating site and I'm trying to start conversation with people and get something more than, I don't know bands, or I don't know anything from the 60s. It's more of just, it's a conversation starter.
Oh, okay, because that was going to be my answer.
Yeah, let's take that filter kind of off real quick.
Yes.
Mine would be really, really boring, and basic, if you will. I would want to see early, because I think that the key is you are the early adopter. You know, like you get to go see you get to see the house shows, or you get to see like the 50 person.
You get to be the hipster.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. I would want one of the other, either early Nirvana when they were doing pre them determining what their name was, like back when they were like writing a different name on each cassette.
Right.
Because I think that's when like like the birth of Seattle grunge would be a lot of fun to be around, and knowing to avoid heroin would be like while going into that would be a great thing. But then also I'd really like to see Tool when they were in their early days. But yeah, those are basic. It's funny that you asked that question or you bring that up, because it's been part of like my nightly thing, is like when I'm tired but not tired enough to go to sleep and I want to put something on to like get me there. I've been looking up like old, or like not old, but I've been looking up metal bands and then like looking up their earliest videos that I can find of like live sets.
Oh, okay.
So I made the mistake last night of finding, or there's not a lot of early OTEP, and it's terrible.
Oh yeah, well, that goes without saying now, doesn't it?
Yeah, Michael, how about you?
Well, I don't really know, honestly. Like,
our band's only 5 years old,
and
we were not.
I guess my only question would be like, would you physically age while you're waiting?
Yes.
Because okay, so then I honestly don't.
When you go
then.
back, do you reverse?
No, you are still so you have aged over the course, because again, you are not missing those years. It's kind of for those who've seen Interstellar.
Okay.
It's that same principles. Time is relative, so you will experience time.
Michael, you haven't seen
you heard me. I did not. I have
you
not.
need to see Interstellar. As someone who has the proclivities that you do and the interests, it is a great film. I just watched it with Melissa recently, as a matter of fact.
If it is not on one of the streamables, I own it, and I live close to you, and you're more than welcome to pick it up.
I know. It's mainly just like pure laziness that I haven't seen it. I mean, like, I know that it's so scientifically literate. I mean, they got, I believe it's physicist Kip Thorne, who writes a lot of books for the layperson to read.
Oh yeah, talk nerdy to me.
Who came on as an advisor and was like, "This is what black holes would do. This is how they would work." Yada yada yada.
Yeah, it was around the time The Martian came out, so there was this really fun like comparison between Martian and Interstellar, where they had people on deck, like you're talking about, for both movies, and it was also, I think, right around when like the YouTube series of how full of shit are these concepts were starting to really pop. Yeah, so cool.
What's funny is the juxtaposition of those two films as well, because if you think of casting for The Martian and Interstellar, two very prominent figures in both of those films, that play out between some of our favorite actors. But anywho, I'm trying not to spoil things for you, Michael.
This is one that Michael should just experience completely blind, because he will weep like a fucking 5-year-old girl.
Yeah,
I mean, I know some of the story, but like, it's fine. We can move on.
Okay,
Michael, did you say you had things written down that weren't pornographic in nature?
Yeah, actually, there were two things I kind of wanted to talk about, but I guess I'll just as an aside, because we were talking about history like a couple minutes ago, and I wanted to mention it. So I know that Shane is kind of tired of me introducing topics that have to do with
abortion,
creationists.
Well, same thing.
Yeah.
Lest
tomato,
we
potato.
be told that we're one note here is all I'm attempting to stave off, my friend.
It's fine. I'm not offended if they're shit. That's fine. No, but. I actually started reading, and now I forget the name of the book, so I'm going to have to look it up later and put it on the show notes or something like that. Note to future self. But there's a historian that I really enjoy. I mean, I can't say I really enjoy. I only read one of his books. His name is Richard Rhodes. But he did a really in-depth, like a deep dive book called The Making of the Atomic Bomb. And essentially, he's a historian. He's not a scientist. He's a historian, and he wrote about the physics community from the turn of the century all the way up to right after the atomic bomb was dropped. And there's a lot of interesting, he also covers like some facets of the nuclear program that was occurring in Germany and also in America at that time. And there was one particular incident that I actually want to talk about before I go into more detail, or that for my next topic. But essentially, I wanted to do more of a historical setting for things, but not just talking about like just boring, like this is the battle of this or this is this war, but more like harder to believe things that have actually occurred in history. Like the one that I do want to talk about, it was
Oppenheimer's favorite sex toy.
I could actually talk about Oppenheimer because
railroad
he's very,
spikes.
very odd. That actually would be a fascinating topic. Now I mention it is talking about Los Alamos, and I mean I have heard that there were pretty much sex orgies that occurred there when they were formulating the atomic bomb. Which, when you think about it, like kind of makes sense. They're designing a weapon that could destroy the Earth. What do you do when you get off of that? Like, you're gonna just fucking debauch yourself to try and forget all the shit that you were designing. So I could talk about that because I don't know how true that is. That would be an interesting thing. But the one thing I want to start with is talking about, it was called, the wiki page was called, the Norwegian heavy water sabotage. And it occurred during World War II.
Interesting.
And it involved
World War II is interesting to me, so go ahead.
Yeah, and it pretty much involved, espionage, on the British and Norwegian side, about a specific heavy water plant, which I'll talk about what heavy water is during that episode. And it involved, yes, and it involved the nuclear weapons program that was happening in Germany.
Huh.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Then.
Speaking of Los Alamos as well, have you encountered Bob Lazar at all? Are you familiar with any of the discussions surrounding him? Not to totally diverge.
No, that
I
name
would
doesn't sound
investigate.
familiar.
So there is, of course, a Rogan episode where they have Bob Lazar on. He's a gentleman who purports to have worked on flying saucers and trying to reverse engineer them. And it's an interesting story. There is a documentary on Netflix called Bob Lazar, Area 51 and Flying Saucers, which is not my favorite thing. It's a bit too self-absorbed for something that's narrated by, oh no, I will have lost it, Mickey Rourke. Mickey Rourke narrates it. And
wow.
It's very ham-fisted, like, what if we're not alone in the universe? What if I can't find my ballsack after I smoke 2 joints? What the fuck are we doing here? And what if we're being watched by people who saw us take a shit last week? You're like, I don't care about, this is not profound what you're saying. You're just,
Also, that was closer to Josh Brolin.
I'll give you Josh Brolin in a second.
Fun fact about Mickey Rourke, he actually was the main character in a video game that came out, I think, for the PlayStation 2 era, where he played a American commando sneaking into, I believe, North Korea to kill North Koreans.
I want my family back.
I will find the title of that and put it in the show notes because I watched, I think it was some British guy, I think the YouTube channel is called Cynical Streams, but he played it. It's a shit game. But like every kill he does, he's like, take that, motherfucker, and just stuff like that.
Okay.
And if you could just find the clips of him saying that, the ISO clips of take that motherfucker, and then just like do spam calls to people. Like cranky anchors with a Mickey Rourke soundboard from that game.
Oh, God.
I would love to do that. That would be absolutely great.
That would be a new Sin City, my friend.
Oh yeah, but sorry, that was an aside. I just like Mickey Rourke. It just popped into my head that video game because it's so shit.
Long story short, too late of other things that you need to watch, Mr. Physicist. Just listen to the Lazar podcast to get a feel for his discussion because his claim is the government has just deleted his identity. And
yeah, because I don't know who he is.
So you will probably find it fascinating. But I went down a major rabbit hole on Halloween last year, where they subsequently interviewed Commander David Fravor as well, who is a pilot who was in a plane that filmed unidentified flying object. Or they have another name for them now. I'm forgetting it off the top of my head, but
UTIs.
There you are. Urinary tract infections.
Yeah, yes. I can actually. I actually might try and give it a listen because I bought wireless headphones.
I was like, why are you showing us your dog collar for your girlfriend?
It's actually I wear that. But I got wireless headphones for work. so I don't have to listen to other people talk. So I can listen to that podcast, that specific one.
Yeah, those two are really well done, and I was sufficiently intrigued by them to actually listen to them, and they're, podcasts of hours, so you'll lose a little time. Anyway, sorry, not to devolve, but...
No, that was it. I just want to talk about fascinating points in history, because as we mentioned probably 30 minutes ago, history is I consider myself a history buff, to the point where I was asked in high school how come I wasn't like majoring in that, and my response was I'd like to make some money, not no money, because coming from Arizona, and speaking of Arizona, I did check, we are ranked 3rd to worst.
Yes,
so
I saw in the notes for last week.
So I didn't want to be a history teacher, and there was nothing else. I was like, if I majored in history, what else could I do? History teacher. And I like
You'd be
making
a substitute teacher for differently abled children.
No. Teaching, not something I want to not make money for. Which is why I'm going with the professor route, because at least I can get paid. And I also do like doing research, even if it's something that I'm not particularly knowledgeable, or not knowledgeable. I don't really care too much about it, but yeah. So the two talking points that I actually wanted to bring up. Have either of you heard of a game called Layers of Fear?
Becky has played that game, and
in the bedroom with John on any number of occasions.
We just...
It's a lot of fear there.
He wouldn't put a playground next to a sewer system, if you know what I'm saying.
That's what we call our... John describes his sex life as a 7-layer dip. So
it's beans all the way down.
Mostly guacamole.
But it's cats all the way up, baby.
That's why he's Papa Guac. So
Oh, I was playing online earlier. I've been dipping my toe, and I've told Shane this already, but I've been getting into Call of Duty's kind of like PUBG kind of thing, the battle royale.
Thug life.
And so my brother and I are linked up, and it's teams of 3. So this random third comes in, and he's reading off our gamer tags, but instead of saying my entire tag, he just goes, "Papa," and I go, "Yes."
Papa, can you hear me?
And this is the first time since changing my handle over to Papa Guac that someone's actually said some of it out loud, and I felt immediately validated, where I was like, this is the best handle I've ever had in my entire life, because the shorthand, instead of people saying Papa Guac, it's like, "Hey Papa, go do this," and it's like, "Yeah, bitch."
So for Shane, Layers of Fear it's a kind of almost like a psychological horror game of sorts, where because I'm playing through the second one, but it reminds me a lot of the first one, where you are an artist, essentially like kind of a washed out artist, that is returning to his...
I was like, go on.
Where you return back to your house after years of neglect, to try and do one last painting.
Oh,
but
I've neglected the house, not myself. I see. Okay.
Oh no, you've neglected yourself.
Well,
you
hopefully.
Also are hallucinating and losing. You've essentially already lost your mind, but it becomes a lot more progressed the more you go through, to where you'll enter in a room, you'll turn around, and the door you came through is gone, and things start changing on you as you're turning around. It's a very good mind fuck, a good trip.
I'll fuck your mind.
I mean, I play this game every time I leave from recording this podcast.
Where am I? What year is it?
Hello?
Why is there no one here?
I
the last man
love
on Earth.
that Wayne has infiltrated the podcast in my life, and now yours. Do you guys?
Well, God knows you say that enough, my friend. So
sorry, Michael, not to cut you off. Sorry.
It's okay. I'm used to it. But it really is. I really enjoyed that game because it definitely the idea of what is real, what isn't real, genuinely terrifies me. Mm-hmm. It's one of the reasons I'm all for people doing shrooms and hallucinogens and all that other stuff, but I don't want to ever do it.
Have we talked about this before?
I don't know.
I'm going to stop asking that, because we're going to get to enough episodes where it's really not going to matter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, especially unless you're binging it, and you're sitting down and listening to all, what is this, 37 in
37?
In a row?
In a row?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Michael, I think you and I have the same same mindset on this where I don't want to know that side of my brain. Like,
oh yeah, like because I know there's plenty of people in the pizza job that frequently come in stoned. I mean, there's one coworker, like literally one of my managers walked up to me when the other person was starting a shift, and he's like, you can hear her snorting the coke in the bathroom. And literally, sure enough, I walked up and I heard,
and she could just take it a step further and go, God, this is good coke that I'm doing at my job.
I mean, everyone else knows that, like, but like I've told people that have come in stoned, that have come in drunk, that have crossfaded, like, I have one rule. Like, as long as you're functioning, I don't care what you're on.
Sorry,
like, just function.
I have one rule.
Why did you have to say crossfade? Because now John and I are both in the background like, what I really meant to say.
Oh, no, mine was like, whenever someone says, I have one rule, it's like, what is your one rule? And my mind is fucked up, so it goes to, you can't come in me, and you can't kiss me on the mouth, and you can't fall in love with me.
Those are 3 rules, John. I'm sorry.
No, they're one rule to crack addicts.
And now I'm going to fall back on the Joker of, that's the rule you're going to have to break to beat me.
Well, but, Greg was the first person to come in my mouth, so he's promoted.
Oh, geez, that's actually one of the reasons why prior management had to sell the store. There was a coworker that was exposing himself to people. But this was before my time.
Kevin?
You can ask my roommate because he was working there at the time.
All right.
But anyway, essentially, like,
how hungry was Howie? That's what we need to know.
Very hungry. But like, I've been asked by at least several people at work. One of them especially is like, "Hey, do you want to do shrooms?" And I'm like, "Nah, I have a tenuous grasp on reality. I don't need that slipping any further, so I'm good. I don't need hallucinogens. Like, it's just not my thing. Like, do them all you want." And I know that there's like people have said, and I've seen like research done on like LSD and how like it can definitely help, like giving LSD to like stage 4 terminal like patients, like get a cancer patients, like they become a lot more comfortable with death and stuff like that. Like, that's cool. It's just not for me.
There's a lot of folks that talk about that with like DMT trips as well. And what's funny, I'm not terrified by those things as much as I don't take drugs at all, but that's
I mean, it's a different reason. Like, you just don't take drugs because...
Well, it's funny that you bring that up, because I was going to have Shane, if he's comfortable doing so, explain why. You've said it before. I've heard you say it multiple times in similar phrasings on why you don't imbibe, where it's something to the effect of you saying that, you're already... It's kind of what, like Michael's saying, like he already has a tenuous grasp.
Yeah, it's the same reason why I don't smoke. Like, I have an addictive personality. I don't need to. I already have one vice that I abuse heavily. I don't need any more. Thank you.
Same thing is I have always said, there's a familial history of addiction with my family, and most of the alcoholics in the family are not happy drunks. That's some of the more miserable individuals in this. I do have a tendency to be very dedicated to chasing things if I enjoy them. I have a severely addictive personality, and I'm a little obsessive compulsive. So
it's why you're masturbating right now, right?
Exactly. There are enough beasts that are on chains in my brain right now. I don't need to release those to the world. It doesn't mean I'm not confronting them. So like a DMT or some sort of psychotropic trip, I wouldn't mind, because again, that's mostly just exploring my own landscape, and I've been in my head for the entirety of my life. I know what goes on in there, so I don't tend to run from those things. I embrace a lot of that, which I tend to be heavily introspective and think about a lot of those things. The reason I read manuals on serial killers, because you start going like, okay, well, let's see how far off the beaten path someone actually has to get in order to get to these really dark places. Because, we all have odd, aberrant thoughts from time to time, as evidenced by 37 episodes of this podcast.
Yeah.
So that's the reason I don't is just I know, having, a bunch of Irish alcoholics in my family tree, I would drink myself to death if I had the opportunity without provocation.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't call that as running away from the problem. That's like you're acknowledging that like that can be an issue,
Right.
and it's better to not even test it.
Yep.
Like it makes complete sense to me. Like that is probably like one of the best reasons I've ever heard
Well,
for not wanting to
Abstaining
do a
is
particular
the
thing.
solution in that case. Yeah.
Well, but
Yeah.
also, I'm not the most effervescent person to be around at all times anyway. When I get caustic, I can be really difficult to deal with, and John can speak to this from many instances. If I get stressed,
Immediately
I can imagine.
have the closest example in my head.
okay, give it. So, but yeah, so I don't need to have something that adds fuel to that particular fire. I'm already hard enough to deal with. So if I then felt a little more limber about explaining my personal perspective on things, it'd be bad.
So you take and I agree with you on that, Shane. It would be it's like pouring gas on a fire.
Yeah.
You know, so and not to
Or
not to be
pouring
too
alcohol on it.
not to be too hyperbolic. But the immediate example that I have is we played a holiday show, and there weren't. So it's.
You're shaking your head.
Are you
Shane.
good? Are you good for
Oh,
this?
please, yes,
Okay.
go ahead. Dude, I am not Sam where, like, I get upset about those things. Like, trust me, if you point out areas where I was a complete asshole, I can give you 7 more stories that I was worse.
So the thing that I agree with you, Shane, is that sometimes the triggers aren't apparent.
Right.
So, like, everyone, like, we can all, like, the group think collective, we can all be like, things are going really well. And then I turn to my left, and I think once you've known somebody for a long enough time, you can start reading their body language and especially just their face. So I turned to Shane after we'd loaded in for this holiday show, and he looked almost as mad as, like, the time that a woman slapped him in a bar. For no reason. Not because he was being a pig or anything, but just because he hadn't watched Vikings.
Wait, no, you can tell me that story another time.
Okay.
Anyway,
And-
continue.
And with Shane, I was like, "Hey, man, what's going on?" And she was like, "No, nothing, no." And it's just how we deal with our own stress. And I know what Shane was doing. And Shane later said it himself. He's like, "Yeah, like I didn't really feel like talking about it at the time. Like everyone else is in a good mood. Like let's just push on." But can you imagine that situation, Shane? But you're buzzed. It would like I can't. You know?
There would be no living with me. Like, in all honesty, I tend to be so transparent at the best of times anyway.
And that's not like, trying to shit on you. That's just
Right,
it's
no,
just-
it's a dig.
not at
Trust
all.
me, I know the trappings of my personality. I have a very big personality,
And it's
so
because you've spent enough time introspectively,
Yep.
and it's because you're not diluting it and you're looking full into it. My issue with myself is, and the reason that I don't want to do shrooms or the DMT side of things is because I haven't spent that amount of time, and because I have it in my head that the moment I do that, then all of a sudden I'm going to be Vince Vaughn in the cell, and I'm going to be getting my intestines fucking sucked out of me.
what are you doing here?
Yeah, which, Michael, if you like Layers of Fear, you should watch The Cell also. And then to get back to Layers of Fear, the reason that was in my head recently is because I was playing Evil Within 2, which
Which I definitely want to play both of those games. I haven't played it, but I watched another person play them on YouTube.
Becky saw bits and pieces of my gameplay of Evil Within 2, and multiple times she's like, "This reminds me of Layers of Fear, just more actiony."
Well, I mean, because it's in a person's brain. Like, both games are set there.
Recommendation: don't play the first one because the mechanics are so clunky, it's cancer. And I would recommend personally, like, just watching like a what I need to know before playing Evil Within 2. And honestly, there's not much. You can be a newcomer to the series and start with 2 and be fine.
Yeah, I think they do a lot of backstory at the very beginning.
They do, and then they integrate it throughout the story because there's some open areas. But anyway, Shane, you're a lovely human for the most part.
God bless you for saying so.
I appreciate your transparency, and then I also appreciate like that you have a filter, that you understand, like, I'm not going to talk about this right now. I'm upset, but I don't want to bring down other people. I'll talk about it later. Like, that's something that not a lot of people get or do.
I find it's just you have the ability to manage situations better when you are damage controlling yourself. And trust me, if you
Agreed.
had seen me, and we've made light allusions, but I had previous relationships with bandmates and other circumstances where I was not able to get a handle on this as readily. And those were some of the most excruciating experiences of my life, of just like riding a roller coaster with another human being, and not necessarily. So this is where I learned to put a lot of those filters in place, of just realizing sometimes you need to navigate yourself out of your own labyrinth and leave the Minotaur alone for a while, and you don't have to drag it out and parade it in front of everybody and be like, hey, look at this, I have a problem. All of my little idiosyncratic things and my inadequacies are starting to show through my face again. I've had 3 drinks. Ha ha ha.
Oh man, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you could just save that for your Tumblr or your Twitter, like a lot of people I know
save
from
the
band.
breakdowns for when I'm alone.
Oh.
Like a good rational human being
I
should.
was gonna say like an Irish Catholic would. Or an ex-Catholic Irish men would do. You
just bottle it up.
Bottle it up, and you let it explode once you've had too much.
Or once she's, gotten you to a sufficient amount of arousal.
And then all over the face, neck, and chest, yes.
Exactly. Well, gentlemen,
from 6 feet away.
I believe I have a nice little hypothetical for us to go out on if there's nothing else for us. Michael, did you have anything else that you wanted to include?
I wanted to ask a question,
go
but
for it.
I like that. No, I like the question, the topic that we had. I was just going to ask about like scary movie genres, but like I like the conversation that we had better.
Well,
We
I
don't
inadvertently
involve
recommended
on
a
that.
horror movie for you, so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's already been hashed out.
We have also talked about like the things that we love. Speaking of another career that I think I would really relish having, I would podcast all the livelong day if we had enough of a modicum of exposure and popularity that people would actually care, because the things that we love we can get so bizarrely deep on. For instance, I had another podcast idea that before we got this started I was planning on actually executing.
Oh yeah.
Which is still a possibility, and I've thought about it now that I've got the setup. It's called
I'm tenting now.
It's called Green Rumors. Trademark for those who are running, but
because fuck you,
and
my name.
Rumor as the Fleetwood Mac rumors kind of title, of getting other musicians to talk about the life experiences you have of playing shows and going out in the weirdest sort of circumstances you find yourself in. And because if you get a musician talking for more than 5 minutes, I can guarantee you they will tell you about the strangest experiences they've had with dealing with a plethora of human emotions, both their own and those that you run into. So that's always a fun thing. But like, speaking of horror, John and I, basically the podcasts we recorded previously on Beyond Hyperbole were basically us just talking about metal music and horror films for at least 3.5 to 4 hours. So with little provocation, he and I will foam at the mouth for a long time about horror films.
I get really jealous with the high concept podcasts that are already out there and doing well, that are essentially that. And like just pop culture, but like deep culture, where there's so much to dive into on, like, if you just look at horror movies in general, where there are genre, subgenre, and offshoots where you could do, like, to your point, Shane, just serious dives where you're not coming up for air for probably a couple hours, or, 5 episodes on one movie and the lore surrounding it. Just there's some crazy shit out there. So I agree with you on that too. It's so much fun to be able to like chat with like-minded people, or even people that have similar, like, differing opinions but an interest on the topic.
Yeah, because debate is fun as long as everyone understands the rules of the debate and turns it and keeps it as a debate,
right,
not a yelling match.
And not bringing personal things in with you, where it's like, well, of course you wouldn't like that. You're a Mormon.
Yeah. Like, and I think I've mentioned it before. This is just a quick aside. Like, I don't talk politics like at all. Like, I would probably be. I would think that a majority of the people that I even went to college with, like that I marched with, didn't know my political, religious affiliations. Like, none of that. Because unless people ask me, I don't care enough to talk about it. Like, it's my own thing. It's my own belief. But like, there's only one person that I actually will have any sort of political discourse with, and it's actually the owner of the Hungry Howies. And it's only like very, very brief things, like, because he knows that I supported Bernie, and he would just come up and be like, "Hey man, how about your man Bernie? Like, how's he going?" And for the longest time, I thought he was Republican because he makes a lot of money. So that was literally my only reason why I assumed that. And then I actually asked him, like, after we had the brief conversation a couple episodes ago, I'm like, what is your political alignment? He's like, it's actually independent. I'm like, shit. But, like, we both just mention stuff that we've heard. We don't, like, actually talk about, like, well, what's your opinion on this? Like, and I think that's why I enjoy talking to him about it, because, like, we don't get heated. It's, like, mentioned offhandedly, like, hey, how about this? Oh, that was an interesting thing that happened. And, like, oh, I didn't hear about it. Or, yeah, I heard about it. Like, sorry, that was, I started rambling there, but
we hit a lot of the same sort of rhythms with, we were talking about how we have occasionally gotten political on here, and it's not saying we are espousing a political belief or a body politic. We are mostly pointing out the fact that, the president in many instances is like a hatchet-wielding madman at a dinner party. It's difficult in the realm of politics as it was previously played. He has managed to just buck the entire system. And so it's more of the spectacle of that we tend to comment on more than pointing out any real political leanings that we've got. So, yeah. It's always nice to, but we're trying not to alienate people here unless you're squeamish about pornography and human decency, and unfortunately,
or pigs with tits.
But you wouldn't have made it this far anyway.
All right, are you?
You would probably turn it off on episode 2,
or 5 minutes into episode. Episode 2. We already got to Uncle Touchy.
Actually, I was just throwing out a random number, but
we
that
were
actually
already there. Yep. All right, gentlemen, are you ready for this interesting hypothetical?
Yes, please.
Yeah, throw it at me.
I have not read this again. I was looking at bits and pieces of it as we were going, so we'll all be on this ride together. I don't know how this is going to play out. So, all right, this is apropos of the fact that we all admit that we are, sort of like a filmic folk. You are given the opportunity to create and direct a feature film. The studio offers you a huge budget, provides you with top-notch writing and technical staff, and allows you to cast whomever you desire in the lead roles. There are essentially no limitations on what this movie can be, except for 2. The movie you make has to fulfill the following 2 criteria.
Shit.
It has to be extremely edgy and transgressive. You need to confront taboo social issues. You need to shock people. Ideally, the film will address ideas that have never been tackled by mainstream filmmakers. In fact, if this movie is not the most controversial film of the year, the studio will not release it. However,
I have heard of this hypothetical before.
It has to get a PG rating. It cannot be R or even PG-13. There may be limited profanity, minor depictions of violence, and fleeting nudity, but nothing that would prompt the ratings board to go beyond a PG classification. So, what is the premise and plot of your hypothetical movie?
I got it.
Now, I've got, there are 27 titles that they have listed here. Now, I imagine I'm going to allow everybody a little latitude here so we can dive in and out of things, because I imagine, based on our conversation previously, John would want to call the film Tit Cup.
Nope.
But,
nope. I have it already.
Okay. I'll make you delay for 5 seconds. I'm going to read off these are the titles. Shock the People Nicely. Prison Culture. Vampire Weekend. Artistic Telekinesis. The Industry Standard. The Dream VCR. A Life in Film. Shaquille in the Shower. Rudimentary Magician. Forever 75. Canadian Football Future. Synesthesia. Collarbone and Chains. The Unknown Companion. Worldwide Perfection. Lost Virginity Redux. The Nude Acquaintance. The Moon Fight. The Countdown. The Price of Sex Appeal. Body versus Mind. Euphoria Forever. The Cannibal's Quandary. The Freewheeling Architect. The Mind Killer. Super Gorilla. Or The Tumor. Those are the ones listed.
So my film's name would either be A Life on Film or Mind Killer.
Okay. Now, I will ask for your explanation of what those plots are after I get Michael's.
I do want to note that when you said Shaq in the shower, I honestly could picture that as like a 90s movie that like starring Shaquille O'Neal because he was making like weird movies like Shazam? I can't remember if it's Kazam or Shazam. Kazam, thank you. But like that was the first thing that popped into my head.
Okay.
But I actually, this was perfectly timed because I just watched. There's a great YouTuber that I watch that I actually I donate to his Patreon. He's this like British chap named Philosophy Tube, and he actually did an episode that he called "Beauty in an Ugly World," and essentially he talked about. It's a Russian name, Vladimir Nabokov, I believe. You already know.
Yes, Lolita.
And Ada. Ada. It's another one of his books. Yes. So I wouldn't mind trying to make a PG. You said it was PG, right?
PG.
A PG version of either Lolita, which do you know what Lolita is, John?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Because I was going to say, you probably know what a lolly is, which is derived from Lolita. Ada or Arda or however the fuck, I can't remember. It was kind of the same idea. It was a hypersexualized book, which you can make it as suggestive as possible while still maintaining a PG rating. You just don't show the sex. But the forbiddenness of it was actually because they were from Alabama. Well, they weren't from Alabama. They were brother and sister. Yeah, exactly. Roll Tide. Which when he said that, I was like, Roll Tide. Yes, exactly. So either of those would be really fascinating to do. Another one that I would at least try and find
I would
some
like
way
to
of
take
doing.
a 5-second reprieve here and say, I just wanted the title you chose, you silly fuck. Like, I was waiting for John, I primed to just give me your title, then we'll get the explanation, but you just steamrolled over John.
Can we do a...
Go ahead.
I have to pee so bad.
Do it.
Okay.
All right, cool. That's fine. Because he didn't clap. He made the motion that he was going to clap. Well, if that's the case, then I'm going to go grab a beer. Then,
all right, have at it.
Because I'll be him.
I'll get some water. Yeah, just steamrolling over the fact that he wanted to get into a taboo of underage young ladies. Go figure. Anywho, so Michael will take a bit reprieve again, and we'll get back to. So John. Tell me why you want to do the Mind Killer or...
Life on Film?
A Life in Film.
A Life in Film. Okay, so I've had this idea for a while now, but we're going to amend it to this hypothetical.
Okay.
So it's a group of friends, and they're in a car, like on a road trip, like let's say like in Arizona, like a desert road. It's 2-lane blacktop, and you don't know this at the start of the film, but they've all died. So it's kind of like Lost. They've all died, and so each of them go to their own...
Spoilers for Lost, by the way.
So they all die, and each one of them, let's say it's 4 people, they all wake up in a different room. But it's a room, but there's no doors. It's a spherical thing, and it's all imbued by a color. And it's playing on the now very common of like, they are going to relive, like if they lived a good life, they're going to relive the best moments that they've had, like your best of greatest hits. However, if they lived a bad life, they have to re-experience all those. It's like Preacher. I hadn't seen Preacher. So I've had this idea for like, it's in my head for like 10 years, and then Preacher did it as their idea of hell.
So purgatory, basically.
Essentially. So I mean, how could we make this controversial but PG? Let's say...
Well, I mean, if you're showing the most, like, sort of repellent instances of someone's life that made them go to hell, I would say you've done a pretty good job of at least establishing there's a plethora of things to pull from.
But let's pull that open just a little bit, just see what that looks like in a PG context. So let's say the main person who is, having to relive his worst moments, what if he was into pica? What if, in PG movies, you could see somebody eat something and just imply that he's just just wanting to eat everybody's shit.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be
snarfing down buckets, yeah.
That'd be controversial. You know, he's getting poop sick. Maybe they're on the cross country road trip to get him to a specialist doctor to help cure him from his poop sickness.
Would it help if we actually establish what the MPAA guidelines are for rating?
No,
because I think that might be important.
There's no cussing. You never actually see him eat shit. Although if I could go to a PG-13 rating, I would have him have like a poop stash, like from eating his own shit.
Oh Lord. Okay. All right. Well, that's interesting.
Shane?
Well, I would say I think I could manage to pull either the industry standard or a life in film. I could go with either one of those. Okay. Prison culture would be a layup for me, I think. Layup. But I think we'll leave that one alone. Though I would really be interested in pursuing The Countdown. So, all right, I've thrown some of those out. So we'll run. All right, Michael, continue your raving and jabbering.
No, I actually thought up something a little bit better. But those if I had to just come up with something off the top of my head, like I just did, I would choose one of those. I can imagine especially for Lolita, coming at it with a very subdued
or on it,
huh?
Coming at it, eh?
Yeah.
All right,
we're not doing phrases anymore.
Apparently not.
No. That's how you get ants. But it would be something where it would definitely be suggestive, because you could definitely use double entendres really, really well. You could probably slip that in very easily.
You are fucking this up.
Whatever. But I believe that you could take something that is controversial as Lolita and turn it into something that's PG, where it would only be the implications that would be very controversial. But I actually did get an idea while I was listening to John talk. It would be stylized. I don't have a title off the top of my head, but it would be kind of like what he was talking about, where it would be set, let's say in the 1930s. Okay. It's a road trip. Okay. So these 3 or 4, outstanding gentlemen, they are going on a quest of sorts. You can style it after Harold and Kumar, make it a comedy, that sort of thing. They get into some zany adventures. And the twist is they're going to a specific rally that's set in Germany around those times. Where they that's the twist. The last 5 minutes of the movie, you find that they're going to a Nazi rally.
Oh,
all right.
That would be of course, especially with how spoiler culture is nowadays, where it's that would be the twist, where if you didn't the whole idea of the movie would be substantially changed if you understood that twist.
It's kind of
how would people adapt to that, because you couldn't talk about the controversy of it without spoiling the whole film, because it would be coming off as a comedy. It would literally not be sold as anything to that extent.
No, it's not a comedy, but that reminds me of a movie, and obviously not in the same way. Do you guys remember a movie called Remember Me with Robert Pattinson?
Yes. I don't remember seeing it, but I remember the conceit.
Can I spoil this movie for you?
Oh, please, go ahead.
Yeah.
So it's a drama, a romance drama movie, and Robert Pattinson's character is, going through personal growth throughout it. He's probably in his early 20s, maybe mid 20s throughout it, if I remember correctly. And
because I think it was right after
Twilight,
Harry Potter, right?
Or Harry Potter and Twilight. He was in Goblet of Fire.
Yeah.
And it won. He was amazing in that movie. I'll probably end up rewatching it. But the plot twist of the movie is that the final scene, he's going to visit his dad. And it's set in New York, and he's going to visit his dad, where his dad works. And it turns out that his dad works in one of the Twin Towers. And it ends on September 11th. After he's gone through all of this personal growth from being a piece of shit to being a slightly less piece of shit, and he's going up to forgive his father, and his father works at one of the top stories of the World Trade Center.
Okay,
and that's how the movie ends. Is because you realize throughout the entire movie that they never show you anything to indicate what period of time you're in.
All right.
So it's like you're like, by the time you get to like that plot twist in general, you're like, fucking hell. And you can't talk about it to anybody else who hasn't seen it, especially like when it came out, without giving it all away.
Right. And you don't want to pull that Band-Aid.
No, because it's worth kind of like journeying through. I'm not going to recommend it, but if it piques your curiosity, watch it and tell me if it's good still or not.
Well, what's funny is it also kind of like, it reminds me of the closest I got to being suicidal in my life was I watched The Butterfly Effect.
Oh, goodness.
And I watched the director's cut without knowing. So the film that I got from Blockbuster had both, so it was like a dual-sided disc, and it had the director's cut and the feature. And the director's cut, spoilers for those who have not encountered, is he is so sort of disgusted by his life that he decides he would be better off having never existed at all, and he strangles himself with the umbilical cord in utero.
Wait, that's the director's cut?
Yes.
Oh, I guess I saw that one.
So that is, and that is not how the film ends at all in the theatrical. And that is the most depressing, disgusting thing I had ever seen. Or I was like, that's deplorable that you would put that on film. It's like, I understand having a down moment, but to honestly believe and then embrace that notion enough to say, like, yeah, this person would be better off having never existed at all, and let's just erase them from existence. It was really touchy for me in like my early 20s. It was not a good look.
Yeah, I bet. Shit. Well, Shane, I guess it's up to you now to carry us home.
All right. Well, I think the closest I can come, pun intended, is since we want to have something that's shocking and we're confronting taboo social issues, I think if we want to strike while the iron is hot here, the first thing I thought of for the countdown is someone who is going in for gender reassignment surgery. I'm giving you the loop up front.
Oh, because that's controversial and
yes. So you address the idea of sexuality and how one identifies and showing them interacting, and we don't have to be lurid, but it also can show someone looking at their body. And I thought about this relative to what you were talking about earlier and the way we started this glorious little podcast of someone putting on breast cups and doing things where we're not going to be overly lurid with the connotation, but we're not going to give you any context of what's happening. It's just the film's called The Countdown, and you walk in showing someone placing these things on their body and sucking themselves into this bizarre consorted state, and you're like, what is happening? And you basically just watch someone go throughout their day-to-day existence as they're prepping for this surgery, and we won't give it until you get to the point where you're finally walking in. You're like, okay, you getting ready to get this thing chopped off you now? And just watch what happens. That would be something that would most certainly get a lot of chatter as far as being, something that's controversial. And we don't have to get, too ghastly with it, because of course we got to keep it PG. So that would, again, this is the reason why I thought the rating scale is something we'd have to take into account, because the amount of nudity that we can get away with, the amount of showing, because if you also loop in somebody who's like obese and make us deal with body issues of looking at someone who is morbidly obese and staring at someone. I mean, we have this revulsion with someone who, I have to look at it daily, stare at someone who's extremely overweight and how to deal with that. Because, I mean, look at something like my 600-pound life. That's a difficult visual to wrap your head around, in particular with someone who's incredibly overweight. Like, there are a lot of things. I mean, think of how big Precious was as a film, just from, theoretically speaking. Yeah, so, I think you could get away with that. But the first thing when I saw The Countdown, I was like, yeah, that's a definite. I could get away with that.
Okay.
I like that. I like that a lot because,
reassignment.
You can really explore with it because, like the only reason why it would be super controversial is because it's a societal thing. It's not, you're not showing gore, right. You're not showing like nudity or sex or anything. It's literally just a societal rejection of it. And you could even go so far as to like hire or get an actor or actress that is currently in the process of transitioning so that you can make it a lot more real instead of just having, I mean, like that. Well, stylize it that way so that it can even feel like keep it like more secretive, so it's not like coming out in the open until like the very end. Because
here's the
could
thing:
also do that.
You can slow burn it, and the reason being that I put it out here is going. You're not just saying it up front. Is have them go and have sexual interactions with both genders. And you can start off with a heteronormative sort of experience initially and have it just be painfully awkward. And you're going, okay, well, this person's just socially awkward. And then, you then flash forward to them having a homosexual encounter and watch it be something that you can, so it's passionate and comfortable. But that's a taboo for a lot of people. And they're not going to be, if we've seen anything from watching shows like Game of Thrones, people get really incensed when you depict two individuals of the same gender being intimate with one another. And you don't have to be lurid or show any of the graphic nature of it, but just put that on screen and make people come to terms with, there's a couple of men kissing.
Yeah. All you need is a makeout, and people would be incensed.
So it's an interesting way to kind of tease, and you could still operate within the mores of keeping it safe for film, but you could get away with doing an awful lot to get people worked up. So John, you were giving a summation, and we trampled all over you.
Oh no!
You were saying
it was a recap. So we have
we have gender reassignment under the operating title of The Countdown.
We have Glass Boat, essentially.
Yes.
We have
a life in film.
A life in film of someone having to watch themselves suffocate themselves with eating poop. And then we have Michael wanting to be a sexual deviant.
You know what?
What? Oh, I'd rather go, if I had to choose one, I would rather do the last one.
Oh, yeah, Michael's a Nazi.
But I don't know what title that would fall
Michael's
under.
a Nazi. Yeah.
You can call it artistic telekinesis. Or the unknown companion. Oh, no, I've got it. Number 15 was worldwide perfection. Ooh. Which is exactly within the socialist caveat there. John, I think the fun thing you could do for yours is just have a shot of the person's face. And so you're not getting into anything, if we're talking about someone who's eating shit, but just have the accompanying soundtrack. Sorry, I nailed the boom mic. That's Shane's first slap. But have someone who's just sitting and doing, since we're all looking at each other right now, in the shot I'm thinking of like...
Oh, looking like they're constipated, to try and put a description to your face for the listeners.
Throw in a squeaker or two.
Yes, throw in a couple and then actually give like liquid diarrhea noise. And, you're doing full soundtrack. You're not actually doing anything other than suggesting this is someone who's having a bowel movement. And then all of a sudden you see them reach a hand in and come up with a handful and they're moving to put it into their mouth, and then you cut.
Yeah.
So you don't actually show them eating shit. You're just giving the impression that this is a person preparing, and you've watched them have a bowel movement, a nasty, horrific shit, and you're prepping for it, as opposed to getting bad.
As a personal philosophy, I do believe that your breakfast, lunch, and dinner should be private affairs. So that suits me as a director, as my personal ideology. So
okay, well, yeah, and then you can shitterbait on top of it.
And how?
Good rationalization for cutting.
Cut back to the person with a shit smattered face, and then just hear.
Oh, or it could just be an all ASMR movie, just so that Michael kills himself after it.
Yeah, that would be reasonable. Well, I think we've managed to shock the people nicely today, gentlemen. It's an interesting hypothetical. I liked that one particularly just because we were talking about film and some taboo subjects earlier for what makes Shane uncomfortable.
That works.
So, I think we've delved greedily and deeply today, like the dwarves in the Mines of Moria. And I hope that you have all enjoyed the deep dive with us on this listless and topicless episode. Since we've watched our download numbers dwindle to a pretty respectable, like 15 to 20 is where we're averaging out. So thank you, family and loved ones. We appreciate you dialing in, but we do this mostly to entertain ourselves, and we've done it very well thus far, thankfully.
Mm-hmm. But hey, 15 to 20, that's a good number.
It's good enough for me.
Yeah.
And again, it's free therapy for the three of us sitting here, so that's mostly what we're here, and that's what I love about it. And that's what I love about you.
Huh?
Hello?
I think he's talking to the listeners here.
Yes, and the two of you for helping facilitate. So we get to just enjoy our little flights of whimsy on a weekly basis, and I appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know how to accept, how to take.
Oh, you know how to accept.
Praise.
I've seen it.
Here, hold on. Let me take it out.
That's not praise.
Here comes.
That's punishment.
John's gonna get a handful of something in a second and slowly raise it to his mouth.
Thimbleful.
Tastes like
well.
childhood.
Almonds.
It tastes like that Fifth Avenue I ate last week. All right. Well, ladies and germaphobes, thank you, as always, for being here with us. We immensely appreciate it. And if you dig what we do, please find us on your preferred podcast platform providers, and you can find us on the social networks and all those marvelous places that you know already, because you've experienced that 800 times now with me saying it. But I kid. Fine, I'll include it.
Yeah.
All right, so you can find us on the social networks at facebook.com/disinformedpodcast. You can find us on Instagram at disinformedpodcast and on the Twitters at disinformedpod. Check us out on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and Stitcher. You can find us all places that irreparable podcasts are hosted. And we hope that you enjoy. If you like what we do, please rate and review. Help us to be found by more than the 15 of you. And I think that is going to wrap it up in a nice burrito-like package. So for the Disinformed Poop Podcast, I'm Shane.
I'm touching myself underneath the table.
Oh.
I'm John.
And I've already touched myself.
I'm John.
Oh. And I'm Michael.
For the glass bottom boat ride that is the Disinformed Podcast. Thank you for coming, everybody. Don't worry, we are going to film it and release it on the countdown.
And you'll float too.
You are not die. Tasty, tasty fear. I've been doing that to Melissa and that poor woman.